In 1932, hundreds of poor men in Alabama were promised free medical care without ever being told they were part of a deadly experiment that would outlive most of them. For 40 years, even as families suffered and cures existed, doctors hid the truth. How could something like this happen, and how far did the deception go? Charlie Pollard kept a small card tucked in his wallet. It was stamped with government seals and promising special free treatment. For a man who had never seen a doctor before, that card was a lifeline. Each visit to the clinic brought new hope. Maybe this time the pain in his joints would ease, or the headaches would fade. Instead, the years brought only more questions. His eyesight dimmed until the world turned to shadows. The aches grew sharper, spreading through his bones and waking him at night. Still, he trusted the doctors, believing their words and holding on to that card as proof that help was coming. Decades later, his family would find the faded card among his things, a silent witness to his faith and to the promise that was never meant to be kept. In Macon County, Alabama, the promise of free medical care was enough to draw hundreds of men to the clinic doors. Most worked the land as sharecroppers, earning barely enough to feed their families. For many, the offer of a hot meal, a doctor's visit, and even burial insurance seemed like a rare kindness. Nearly all were unable to read the forms they signed or the flyers posted in churchyards and general stores. Official words like special free treatment and government doctors carried weight in a world where poverty left little room for questions. The men trusted what they were told, not because they understood, but because the system around them left no other choice. In a county where literacy rates hovered around 20%, true consent was never possible. The experiment grew quietly, fed by need and by trust, until nearly 600 men were enrolled. Doctors in white coats gathered men for what they called special free treatment. The promise sounded generous, but the reality was far different. Instead of cures, the men received placebos, aspirin, mineral tonics, and vitamins, while the real disease continued its slow destruction. Painful spinal taps were ordered, not to help, but to measure how far the damage had spread. Letters arrived stamped with official seals, warning this was their last chance for care. In truth, these procedures offered no relief, only more pain and more data for the records. By the late 1940s, penicillin was saving lives across the country. The men in Macon County were kept from it. Local doctors who tried to help were told to turn them away. Through it all, Nurse Eunice Rivers became the familiar face of the study. She drove men to appointments, handed out meals, and reassured families. Her kindness built trust, but her orders came from Washington. Every gesture of comfort kept the experiment alive. Death came quietly to Macon County, often without warning. By the time the experiment ended, at least 128 men had died from syphilis or its complications. Some lost their sight, others slipped into dementia, and many simply faded away, their pain dismissed as just another symptom. The damage did not stop with them. 40 wives contracted the disease from husbands who never knew the truth. 19 children were born carrying the infection before they took their first breath. Families gathered around sick beds, wondering why medicine had failed them, never suspecting it had been withheld on purpose. Generations grew up with empty chairs at the table, stories cut short, and questions that no one could answer. The numbers are stark, but behind each one is a family changed forever. What began as a promise of help became a legacy of loss that spread far beyond the men who first lined up at the clinic doors. In 1972, a government employee named Peter Buxton sent a letter that would change everything. For 6 years, his warnings about the study's ethics were ignored. But when he finally reached out to reporter Jean Heller at the Associated Press, the silence ended. On July 25th, the Associated Press broke the story. Hundreds of black men in Alabama had been used as unwitting test subjects for 40 years, denied treatment even after penicillin became standard care. The news hit the front pages and sparked immediate outrage. Congressional offices were flooded with calls. Demands for answers echoed across the country, as the names Buxton and Heller became linked to a scandal that could no longer be hidden. No one was ever prosecuted for what happened in Macon County. Instead, the government offered a $10 million settlement to the survivors and families. Most of the men were already gone. Many records vanished, some sealed away in federal archives, others quietly destroyed. The official report called the study ethically unjustified, and its results were disproportionately meager compared with known risks to human subjects involved. One internal memo tried to explain it away. It said the men would not have taken treatment anyway, but the truth was buried along with the files, and the real cost could never be paid. Trust in medicine is never guaranteed. It is earned or lost. Even now, hidden files and silent victims remind us. Transparency is not just policy, it is protection. Let us not forget that.